Hey, welcome back to this special bonus episode of the Infamous Podcast. This is Brian.
This is the Utopian Darryl.
I was going to say this is the banging on my mic stand, Darryl.
Well, I did that pre-show.
Pre-show.
That's in the past.
Okay, I'm sorry. So that's the past. I should let it die, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Come on. Do you not listen to Rafiki? The teachings of Rafiki?
I do not listen to the teachings of Rafiki. I feel like you're telling me I should.
Mm-hmm. It's in the past. What does it matter? Or something there along that sort.
That was a good Rafiki impression you did there, my friend.
Yeah, I'm here all day.
So,
well,
yeah.
Actually, for the next hour, so...
Yeah, for the next hour. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So we are reviewing Jupiter's Legacy, Volume 1, the Netflix original Millar World series based on the Mark Millar, Frank Quitely, Jupiter's Legacy, Jupiter's Circle. And you wanted me to talk about the comic a little bit before we got started, right?
Yeah, because I think it gives a little bit of kind of just a nice little foundation for what we're going to go into, even though we're not going to talk about the comic like the whole show.
No,
it just kind of gives everybody a good idea of where the comic is coming from,
okay,
versus where this is and how we feel about it.
Sure. Okay, so the comic Jupiter's Legacy starts with it's kind of weird because they've redone kind of the order things went in. But I'm going to talk about like the original order, and it was it starts in the 30s with Sheldon Sampson, who's a very patriotic American, and he and his family lose everything in the lost everything in the stock market crash of 1929. And when this happens, he is drawn to this island. He starts having visions of it, and so he journeys to this island. He takes this trek with his brother Walter, his fiance. Well, no, Grace his fiance at the time?
Yeah, well, she actually broke up with him because
that's right. You're right. Sorry. Yeah. So
everything.
So with his fiance Grace, and then 3 friends from college, and they are the 6 original superheroes to this world. And so when they're on this island, they get powers, and then Sheldon and everybody comes back. And the thing with the comic, right, it kind of, it starts out like introducing who these people are, and then we get to see their abilities and kind of a look into who they are. And then it jumps to the ending of the Great Recession from 2008, and them telling President Obama at the time what he should be doing. And Sheldon is adamant that, and he's been adamant the whole time they've been, the group is called the Union. It's kind of like their Justice League. He's been adamant that they have a responsibility to do what America's leadership wants them to do, to help protect them, and to not necessarily like solve all their problems. But in the future, their kids have their own powers. They're essentially Kardashians. I think is a good way to put it.
That's actually a very good way to put it.
And they're like seeking like endorsements and fame and interviews. And the Utopian and Lady Liberty are married, and they have a child, Brandon and Chloe. Brandon's a drunk who likes hooking up with groupies. Chloe's a model and drug addict who likes trying to kill herself. So, Brandon is, he suffers from a tremendous inferiority complex. But who wouldn't, right? His dad is the pinnacle of, human
of excellence, of everything.
Yeah, of excellence. Yeah. And not only is Sheldon, like, so Sheldon this entire time from the 30s to the 2000s to the aughts has kept his secret identity. He's lived as Sheldon Sampson, but so there's just been all of this stuff that he's done that like other heroes have come out and like, this is who I am. Um, even with his kids being out as heroes, like the Utopian still protects his like. It's like, come on, everybody knows who you are. Um, but yeah, so it's this, and then you get in the original run for Jupiter's Legacy, Jupiter's Circle, you get the or I'm sorry, Jupiter's Legacy. So you get the whole um the kids are not. So it's like that second or third generation, like when you own a sports franchise and you hand it down to your kids, the Bengals, and
I
they're
was about to
just
say,
not
yeah,
very good. Like
Mike Brown.
I imagine like when Jerry Jones finally decides to step down and hands the reins over to his kids, like the Cowboys are just gonna go into the toilet. Because they're gonna be more interested in staying wealthy than winning championships. And even though the Cowboys suck and haven't won a championship in a long time, Jerry Jones still really wants to win Super Bowls. Um, but anyway, there's just all this stuff going on. There's fights. There's events like the villains have gotten more and more just radicalized and evil, and so Walter, who is the Utopian or Sheldon's brother, kind of spearheads this whole movement to like take Lady Liberty and the Utopian off the board and essentially seat Brandon in a place of power. Chloe finds out she's pregnant after having a drug overdose with a guy named Hutch, who is the son of the Union's former member and now greatest adversary, Skyfox. And they end up going on the run after Walter and Brandon lead the superheroes in killing the Utopian and Lady Liberty. And I have to say, like, the way they do this in the comic, it's really interesting because like the whole of the superhero community teams up against these two who they feel like are holding them back. And they a lot of the heroes just throw themselves at the Utopian as cannon fodder until Brandon can step in and like get the job done, so to speak. And then Lady Liberty, Walter, goes into her head and like makes her think everything's okay. And then when they come out, you see she's like just stuck through with every kind of bladed weapon that's ever existed. And then the kids take over. Chloe and Hutch go on the run. And then we get we get like later on, like their kid, he's a little kid, he's got powers, they're hiding in Australia. We get some flashbacks to the island, where we get to see some of the Union in better times. And and then at the end of Jupiter's Legacy, Jason is found out by Barnabas. What's his last name? Barnabas Wolf. Sorry, totally slipped my mind there. And so he's brought out of hiding, and that's where it ends. And then we jump back and forth between Jupiter's Circle and Jupiter's Legacy, from here on out. And so, Jupiter's Circle, it's the old guard. You see the Union in their prime. You see what's happening. You've got the heroes fighting each other over who's going to be in charge now. It's really really good. I really liked it. You said you weren't like as big a fan of the Jupiter Circle stuff though, right?
So again, I read this as Jupiter's Legacy 1 and 2.
Okay.
At first, like back 3-4 years ago. I did not like Jupiter's Legacy Volume 1 that much.
Oh, see, yeah.
With how they took over, because there was a major lack of what I would call motivation for why this was going on. And this is one of the things I think that actually, despite its faults, what the series does a little bit better. Jupiter's Legacy Volume 2, I actually really enjoyed, with Chloe and Hutch's kid. I really liked him, and where that led to. Jupiter's Circle was okay. I think it took me a while to get, because there was a definite change, not just in the artwork,
Mm-hmm.
but in the way it was written. It was written like a Silver Age comic, and I think that took me a while. That took me almost all of
No,
volume.
you got to go back further. What's written like the Golden Age?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
Golden
like
Age. Yeah,
so, like it was written like in the 30s and 40s. Um,
but
whereas,
it was
yeah, like the first round with Jupiter's Legacy was written in you know, like the like just modern day
right,
comics.
and
I wonder what they're gonna call this most recent like version. Like
right.
is this gonna be like the woke times? Is it gonna be like the Copper Age? Is it gonna be the
So the
dog turd
next
on your
one,
shoe age?
and I don't know if I told you this, but like, so Jupiter's Legacy Requiem was announced in 2019,
Yeah.
and the first issue I think comes out this or next month
Yep.
or in July or something like that.
Yeah, it's coming out soon.
So yeah, Jupiter Circle, it did provide a better basis for who these characters were.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we never really got that because Utopian gets killed in issue 2, maybe 3, I don't remember, but it does a better job really showing you what type of person he is, and as
Yeah.
despite being for the most part good, his inflexibility,
Yeah.
which kind of leads to a lot of what happens. And this is another thing I think the show does pretty well, is show how inflexible he is with his code.
Yeah. So, all right. So, do you want to hop into the show?
Yeah, let's hop into the show
Okay.
from here,
So the
because
show,
I think that was a really good way how you gave everybody kind of like that
Yeah.
broad brush over what this is.
and so the show definitely has taken some departures from
Yes.
from the comic, but I think one of the things about the show that I have a hard time with is the cast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they got like, I don't feel like they have necessarily the right people in the right roles. I think that's part of the problem. But I also think that some of the writing is pretty piss poor. There was a change in showrunners at one point.
Midway through, I
Yeah.
think, was it?
And so like Stephen Estonite left due to creative differences. And so, like that there was a huge like tonal change, but then Stephen Estonite still like they used the season finale that he wrote. So, it's why it kind of like had a stamp on it that's like, okay, I kind of want to see more. But I think here's what I really liked. I liked the interaction with the characters. I liked how much bigger the world of superheroes was, because in the comics, it always felt like really unrealistic that there were so many heroes out there now, because they made it seem like it only happened from reproduction, whereas
Right.
it seems like they really unlocked something in humanity. And plus, this is almost 90 years later.
Right.
So maybe these are all like their great grandkids of the original 6 and everything, but like, if so, that's a super incestuous bunch. So, but yeah, I told you, I think I want to stop watching things when it comes to comics that I'm super invested
Mm-hmm.
in. Because I definitely had some issues with the way they kind of shook the story up. Now, it wasn't as bad as Invincible, where they took and like,
Shredded it.
they shredded the comic and then put it in a boggle box and then shook it up and then hit that little popper and like out it came and how it fell. That's the order the story was in. This has a very coherent story from start to finish. My big issue is they could have taken all the flashback stuff and front loaded that in the first 2 episodes and given us flash forwards of the kids being heroes, like them having kids, and not really telling us like who the parents were of each child. And that would help build some drama and some stakes, in my opinion.
So we've talked about this, and that's again my biggest issue too. Now, I did have some issues with some of the casting and some of the, to put it kindly, the missing acting skills of certain, you know, people in this show.
Yeah.
And yes, I did have issues with some of the writing, but yes, there was far too much focus on Sheldon and company's past in 1929. There was just way too much of that.
Yes.
Where, like you said, if they would have done 2 episodes where that could have been wrapped up in 2 episodes, and then the rest of the time could have been, if you wanted to do flashbacks, you could have done some flashbacks of some of the stuff that was in Jupiter Circle.
Yeah.
As far as them in the 50s, 40s, 60s.
Or save that for season 2 when you start season 2 with
which,
that. You know,
which
like,
I think they probably will.
Yeah.
If we get a season 2, I think that's what they will do.
Yeah.
But and you could have used more of that time. I actually like your idea of not necessarily, now granted, knowing the comic, we would know who the characters once they said Brandon. Okay, I know who Brandon is, who his dad is. But for a lot of people, that would have been a very good, that's the utopian son.
So here's the thing, though, is in the comic or in the show, they give him a superhero alias. His name is the Paragon, right? If they only referred to him as the Paragon, and maybe they would have given Chloe, like, you know, the Cutter or whatever as like a name, and just refer to him as that, and then we find out Paragon is, you know, Brandon Sampson. Like, that would be super interesting. You know, I think I don't think. Like, I know I didn't like the fact that, like, the Union were all strangers to each other. They didn't have this, like, shared history when they went to the island. You know, like, Fitz was just some guy who worked in the Sampson's steel factory. The only ones who actually knew each other were Walter, George and Walt and Sheldon. And then Grace was this angry, like, journalist, like
Lois Lane sort of reporter.
She was a homeless woman's Lois Lane. And you know, like, even in the show, it's like, it's Grace Kennedy Sampson, you know, like, that's not how they did that in the 30s.
Right.
So, or even in the 50s. But yeah, so that I just, like, honestly, I like, at the end, I didn't care that they race swapped Fitz, because Fitz was such a non-character. He's, for some reason, a paraplegic. He's got some weird, like, scars on his face. Like, great, they'll tell us that. I didn't need to know that story yet. I just didn't like that he was a
steel mill worker.
Just a random guy. He was a
random guy,
picked up. Yeah. And then with what's his name? Blue Bolt, like, he was legitimately an afterthought. We didn't meet Blue Bolt until, like, the second to last episode. And that character is someone who they were all very familiar with, because in the comic he's gay, and he, you know, is hiding that lifestyle, and he's like he ends up trying to be black, or, you know, J. Edgar Hoover tries to blackmail him. But I thought Matt Lanter would have made a much better Blue Bolt than Sky Fox.
Yeah, and now, don't get me wrong, I actually liked him as George.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I think you're right in that regard. I think he would have made a better Blue Bolt. Who, again, that's the issue I had too. There was, like, there was a lack of that, like you said, the lack of connection between these people that, you know, made this huge trip to the island, which I think that's one of the things that took a little bit away from, you know, them as a team, as a union. Even though they were strangers then, it never felt like
they weren't not strangers.
They had gone through 90 years together. So disregarding the fact that they were strangers in the beginning, they still remained strangers 90 years later, which to me, that seemed really, that if it's one thing if there was tension there, but there was just something missing from their connection, you know, in the 90 years after getting their powers together.
Yeah. No, absolutely, you're right. And again, I think we saw too much of how that sausage was made with them
Hmm.
becoming the heroes on the island. Um, Josh Duhamel hamming it up in 1930s Kansas is something that I don't really care to watch. Like if it would have all been in one episode, it would have been much better than over the span of like 3 episodes. Um, because then I could have skipped it much easier. Kurtwood Smith showing up as some uh, weirdo farmer who is sharing the same hallucinations. Again, in the comic, when Sheldon has his dream and he tells everybody, they're like, "Hell yeah, Shell, we believe in you. Let's go do this. Let's find out what's happening." And in here, they like have him committed, and it's just
And you know what? One that the idea that they were behind him in the comic to me would have strengthened the idea of them after all these years.
yep,
Maybe sort of trying to reevaluate how they've looked at things.
yeah,
The way it goes here, the way it goes in this series, which again I did enjoy the series, definitely much more than Invincible. Uh, but there were some things that you know that there was that lack of connection with the characters. I did really enjoy, like you were talking about, the interactions.
yeah.
My again, probably my favorite character in here. And again, I actually like Josh Duhamel for the most part. I wasn't a fan of his stuff in the sense of going back in the past, but I really liked how, as for the most part, as him as a utopian,
Uh huh.
that kind of that hey, we adhere to this code no matter what. But it was Hutch, and again, this was a character that was also race swap, but I actually really didn't care
I think
in this regard.
Hutch and Walter turned out to be my two favorite parts.
Yeah.
I was really hoping that Brandon was going to be a much better character than he turned out to be, because in the comics, I really enjoy Brandon's fall from grace um, into what he becomes. So that was like he's a super simp for the Utopian,
Hmm.
which just doesn't sit right, because especially when he breaks the code, it's more like a guideline anyway. Um,
Yeah.
he like he still like just comes around and like takes his poison, and he's like, you're grounded. You have to stay on the farm. Um,
I
I don't know. It just seemed like no, he's gonna go off. And then the fact that Brandon and Chloe didn't actually have any friends within the superhero community was really weird.
Well, Brandon did, but
Kinda. I mean, he's
but you
hanging out with ex girlfriends.
well no. They tell us that he has friends, and his friend Barry, which was what was his name, Seismic or something like
Yeah,
that. But again, it's going to that connection thing. They never give that a chance to actually show it.
right.
So when Seismic or Barry, gets cut in half, I don't feel anything for it.
Hmm.
That's why, again, if they would have, and while I liked the fight, that initial fight in the first episode with Black Star,
Yeah,
it was one of those things that came too early because we did not establish any relationship. So when these two soups that were friends, or actually three that were friends of Brandon die, you don't feel anything because nothing. We never got that connection between him. Yes,
yeah,
we had a drink. Him and Barry had a drink, but there was nothing substantive formed in that little interaction with me.
yep,
So that was another one of those things that they really missed on what they were trying to do.
yeah, yeah.
One thing I will say, this did do better, even though, like you said, he is a super simp and again, he does have that same inferiority complex as he does in a comic. It just manifests in a different
Yeah, but
way.
he comes across as a sub instead of someone who's actually kind of dominant.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um, yeah,
I was about to say, what I liked in this one, and again, my biggest issue, like I said, as far as the comic volume one, there was never a strong enough reason for me to believe that all these soups would turn on the Utopian and Lady Liberty. The
yeah,
show does a better job of explaining that, hey, like you said, these, um, villains are becoming radicalized. They are out for blood, and these soups are dying, and we never really see that in the comic. Now, with Brandon, what I liked in the series is that this whole time he is he is ambivalent towards the code, except when someone, I think it was the Flair's daughter, I forgot her name, uh, Petra, is thinking about quitting. Yeah, yeah, she's thinking about quitting. Brandon reiterates the code, and then he has that conversation with his dad, who's like, "No, the code. I believe in it because I said it." And then we get that finale where it looks like the Utopian is more afraid of breaking the code than letting his son die.
Right.
And I think that will be the impetus I needed to kind of believe that, I could see why Brandon would turn on his dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it was funny because even though he didn't see his father about to break the code, it's still in his mind that his dad cared more about the code than him.
Yeah.
And I think that will lead to a season 2 where we get volume 1. It's funny because in certain ways this felt more like a prequel to volume 1 in certain aspects, while in other aspects it lined up with some of what was going on, like with Chloe and Hutch.
Yeah. What I think would have been interesting is if they would have either done none of the past at all, right? Just show us the current state of superheroes. And, you end the season, you could even end the season where they ended it, which wasn't a problem. But because I feel like they're going to keep the Utopian is steeped deeply in plot armor on this show. But,
it's going to be kind of like Nolan not leaving Invincible in a way.
Right? Or like Hero not dying on Heroes. But like, the change that they made, the changes that they made to George, because we don't see any of George as like Sky Fox at all, right?
No.
Until the very end. We don't see any of the Flair other than in for the most part in real time, and then when he's fixing stuff on the ship on the way out. But and then Richard Conrad, Blue Bolt, like literally is an afterthought. Like he really was. And I feel like they could have done a lot more with the three of them. Because in the comic, I mean, Flair gets injured and is paraplegic, but he comes back. Like when it's modern day, he's healed. Like not I guess he is healed. Because he tries to stop a plane from crashing by himself, and that's how he gets injured. But like he was also kind of a Lothario with the ladies, and he had a thing for 19-year-olds. And he got one of them into the superhero game, even though she didn't have any powers. Mainly just because he liked having the attention. And it's just there was so much more stuff that they could have focused on, where there's a lot of story to tell. This is a part of the Millar World deal where, I mean, they gave him like $500 million to have first looks for anything that he does. Like, I think any new Kick-Ass stuff is on here, any more like Secret Service stuff, any more Nemesis, all of that, like Netflix has the first right to, which is great. And
that is awesome. Yeah.
Mark Millar was a 30-year overnight success, right? That dude he paid his dues. He wrote some great comics long before Jupiter's Legacy or Kick-Ass. He's responsible for Civil War. He's responsible for Old Man Logan. Which, like, I hate Wolverine. I love Old Man Logan. He wrote Ultimate X-Men. He wrote on Ultimate X-Men. He wrote on Ultimate Fantastic Four. Wanted. People tend to forget Wanted. Kingsman: The Secret Service. He's the guy. He did The Authority. He replaced Warren Ellis on The Authority.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
That part.
And so, I'm going to say, like, I know Ultimate Spider-Man is supposed to be the one we're supposed to love, but, like, the first 3 volumes of Ultimate X-Men, I love just love. Um, so, um, but yeah, like Wanted turned into a movie. I think Wanted is like ripe for a reboot. He did this great book in 2005 called Huck, about just kind of a Forrest Gumpish type character.
That's another one I
Huck.
forgot.
Huck is
I really yes, it is.
I want to see
Great,
Huck as
great
a Netflix as a 6-episode Netflix miniseries. He did Chrononauts, which is great. You know, Kick-Ass Hit Girl, all this stuff. He's the dude. Millar World is a real thing. And you know, so with all of this, with all that being said, there's a very rich tapestry to a lot of these characters, and we get the superficial version of it because they want to show Josh Duhamel sweaty and dirty in you know, the Dust Bowl, and I like Josh Duhamel, so I like. This is not. I like Josh Duhamel, but I like Josh Duhamel, except for the fact that I don't think he's a lead actor. He looks like a lead actor. He's tall. He's handsome. He's likable, but he's a character actor. And the more like chances he gets to be a character actor, I think the more people will like stop sleeping on Josh Duhamel. I think he would have been an amazing George.
I could actually see that.
Right?
I could really see that. Yeah.
Like, I think it would have been amazing to have him as George. And then you move Matt Lanter over to Conrad, and then I don't know who you get to play the Utopian. Henry Cavill.
Yeah. And again, this is
hold on, wait, no, Michael B. Jordan.
John David Washington.
There you go, John David Washington. He's my dude. But yeah, and then I thought Leslie Bibb was like horribly miscast.
Yeah. So again, this is coming from someone who liked Josh Duhamel as a Utopian. I agree. I think he would actually have been a better George.
I didn't dislike him as the Utopian.
Yeah.
He aesthetically looked like you want the Utopian to look.
Yeah.
I think Josh Duhamel in a different world might have been a pretty decent like Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Hal Jordan. So,
yeah. But to your point of Leslie Bibb, yeah, she did have a couple moments, especially later in the series, that were pretty good. But overall, she lacked that power, that strength.
Yeah,
you expect from Lady Liberty.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like she didn't have any of that like presence that Lady Liberty had. I will say that the character that I turned around on the most during the series, though, was Elena Kampouris as Chloe Sampson. Like, you know, I actually kind of started, like, I was rooting for Chloe by the end.
Yeah. Well, first thing I thought was, like, she is terrible. Like, this is going to be...
I think part of the problem is that wig that she's wearing. Like, you just can't take anyone wearing that wig seriously.
Yeah, and even it's one of those things that even watching her deliver her lines in the first few episodes, I thought like there was that good scene. She had a good scene early on with that one-on-one with her dad at her apartment, which I really liked. And I think that's when it sort of started turning. I mean, again, it was up and down, but by the time that second half of the season came along, I actually liked her character.
Yeah, her and Hutch were the best part of the second half of the season.
Yeah, so Hutch was played by Ian Quinlan.
Yep.
Which I don't know him from anything, but I thought he was great.
Yeah, I thought he was the dude from Jessica Jones and Spartacus at first.
Oh. I know who you're talking about.
I don't remember the actor's name, but like I liked that guy. But no, Ian Quinlan was let's check his IMDb real quick.
Yeah. He was in a few episodes of Gotham as Carl Pinckney.
I never watched Gotham. So
he's in a lot of TV shows, like one
Sneaky
episode
Pete,
here and there. Sneaky Pete.
Sneaky Pete, I've watched a little bit of that just because I like Giovanna Ribisi. You know, I don't know The Long Road Home. Oh, he was in 2 episodes of Orange is the New Black. And yeah, I mean, this is the biggest thing he's ever done, and I thought he totally rose to the occasion. I know we were kind of like iffy about the whole race swap with Hutch, but like I think the
It worked.
swagger that this kid
Yeah.
brings to the role totally makes it work.
And see, this is an example of one of those we always say, hey, as he captures who Hutch is, but also he brings his own little, like you said, swag to it,
Mm-hmm.
which to the point where if you're bringing somebody in to, make the role their own.
Yeah, he captured Hutch's swag from the comic, for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
and again, he was my favorite part. Like, even though, I liked characters here and there, I think he was far and away from me my favorite character in the series.
Yeah, it's between him and Chloe for me, because like I said, once they started showing Chloe using her powers.
Yes.
And like even like as big of a screw up as she was, it was great. The other character I had a really love-hate relationship with was Walter. In the comic, Walter is low-key the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Until he's the bad guy. But like, but we get to see him being the bad guy, and like, what he does to George is horrific and terrible. But like Sheldon doesn't believe it. None of the other people believe it. Like he essentially just gaslights Skyfox for the entirety of the 40s and 50s. And so I felt like I thought he had the best costume, the Brainwave costume with the Brainwave logo. And I liked how he, like, the effect that they showed for him using his powers, like coming out of his hand and stuff with like the kind of telekinesis-y type like mind control. But I will say he was, again, just a little too like on the nose mustache twirly. It would have been pretty cool if he would have been a little more, again, like low key, like in the, like,
a little
like,
more subtle.
Yeah, just subtle. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. He definitely should use some subtlety. But yeah, I don't know. I thought the makeup that they did on him, he and Josh Duhamel were great as well. The old man makeup.
There were times where I thought it was fine, and then other times whether it caught the light or a movement in a certain way, it distracted me.
Okay.
And I think that was earlier on in the series, and as the series went on, I think I got used to it a little bit. So
yeah,
it wasn't a distraction. It wasn't Henry Cavill's phantom lip or anything like that.
I think some of that was just the beard that Josh Duhamel had pasted to his face wasn't great, and the same with Ben Daniels as Walter. Although with Leslie Bibb, all they did was dye her hair silver, so she still looked like she hadn't aged a day. She just had a better haircut that was silver than she did in the 30s. So yeah, story wise, they changed things, and again, I think some of the things were definitely changed for the good. I think following this Lost Arrow model of past and present in every episode was for the birds. Like it never let them set the foundation of who the Union was and why we should care about the code and why we believe these younger heroes want to make a change. So much like Kingdom Come, when Magog comes around and he set off a nuclear explosion in Kansas, making it like infertile. But like he's stepping up to Superman. He kills the Joker. He's like, no, we need to just be putting a stop to these threats. Like that works because again, at that point we had 55 years, 55, 60 years of foundational Superman. No, that's not true. We had 60 years of foundational Superman to base all of that truth, justice, and the American way on. Here, they just told us about it. They didn't show us any of it.
Yes. Yeah. And despite that, because I agree with everything you just said there, I like that conflict of, and again, one of the things this did better than the comic was actually show the younger generation getting their asses kicked, dying,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's where you understand why they say, dude, this is, like you said, this is for the birds. Like, what do you mean not killing?
Yeah.
Hey, if it's kill or be killed, hey, I'm going to be the one doing the killing
Right.
instead of. I mean, and again, there's one of the characters who was supposed to be Chloe's friend that even to the end of her life, as she's dying,
Mm-hmm.
and Lady Liberty comes to her, she's like, "I didn't break the code,"
Yeah.
which I think that is a fundamental. That was one of the actually better parts what I like that conflict, because again, when you have, if you have that much power, and I know that, Sheldon slash the Utopian decided
Yeah.
early on, we don't meddle in these affairs, we trust the politicians,
We don't kill and we don't govern, like, which
Yeah.
is great. But
Yeah,
like, to your
because
point, Ghost Beam, like, dying, like, from sticking to the code. Every time she says the code, all I can hear is Jeffrey Rush in Pirates. Stick to the code.
it's more of a guideline.
Keep to the code. It's like,
Yeah.
come on, like, it was so lazy to just tell us about the code and not show us the
Yeah.
code.
And again,
the
that's
code.
where they could have. Yeah, that's where you're talking about. They could have used some of this time instead of going back every single episode of showing his journey to get there. Maybe showing why he uses that code.
I mean, think about the formula for the series. If the first 2 episodes of every volume is the past, and then the last 6 episodes of every episode is the present.
Yeah, I think that would have worked a lot better for me.
I'd be totally on board with that, because Arrow killed that trope. Killed it. They killed it. They dug it up. They brought it back to life. They killed it again. They dug it up. They cloned it from, like, the carcass, and then said, by the way, now you're flash forwards, which was worse, and killed it again. And, like, Lost, I think, probably did it as well as any IP has done, the idea of, like, flashbacks forwards, like, playing with time. But yeah, this was a little much.
Yeah. So I do appreciate the idea of, getting to Sheldon's code, what both in the comic and in this, as far as not governing.
Yeah.
Because he says, where does it end? I think there's a line where he says, where does it end? And it's funny because what he says, why he was fighting against governing, is the exact reason of what happens in the comic when his, son, well, actually being led, unwittingly being led by Walter. They do that exact thing that Sheldon was afraid of.
And they don't,
of taking over.
And when they take over in the comic, they are not capable of actually governing.
Right.
That's the thing. They make they legitimately make things worse. Which is hard to believe. But yeah, it's just one of these things where there was so much wasted time. Like the hiking on the island, it's like, okay, great. Like, we know that this is like a little bit of Star Wars and a little bit of Superman, a little bit of King Kong. But they needed to treat everything about how they got their powers like Jaws. The less we see, the more interested we would become in it, because watching these 6 strangers put on a boat to find out what happens when you start being polite and you start getting real and arguing constantly, like, this could have been on MTV in the 90s.
Yeah.
Real world, random boat in the ocean.
Yeah, that was overdone to the nth degree for me. That, again, and it's why the last 2 episodes dragged.
See, I didn't think the last. I didn't find that, like, same dragging phenomena that you found at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the whole ship journey, like you said, they were arguing, and yes, I know when they got on the island, part of the idea was, were they worthy, and they showed past groups that have gotten there end up killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole the whole everything on the ship for me was unnecessary.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
island, some of it was unnecessary. A lot of it was unnecessary, and some of it was okay.
yeah.
But when I mean dragged, and I don't think necessarily the finale dragged. I thought that was actually okay, but it was that your favorite word penultimate episode for me that weighed it down. And again, there were some slow parts throughout the series, but
Right.
not necessarily that halted. That it never felt like it halted to a stop
Yeah,
for me.
the narrative never came to like a screeching train track, of like we need to just stop what we're doing. Like even with the switch in tone from writers and things like that.
Mhm.
Um but yeah, it was weird. I I'm interested to see if it gets picked up. I'm pretty sure it will because I've seen a lot of people talking about it. Um, we're not on Twitter, so I have no idea what Twitter's saying about this, but I've seen people posting about it on Facebook and things. And I think one of the problems this show had, and I was talking to, I was talking to Carlo, texting with Carlo yesterday, and he's like, well, it seems like The Boys. I'm like, it is nothing like The Boys. It's not even the same category as The Boys.
No.
And I think that's gonna hurt it because people are gonna expect this to be gory torture porn, or gore porn, like The Boys is, and like Invincible was. And there is a wholesome streak to this, where at the same time there is a little bit of edge where the superheroes stray. But at the same time, like in the opening. Well, okay. First off, I hated the very opening scene when they were little kids. That was stupid and
Yeah.
unnecessary. It was a weird virtue signal, in my opinion. But the first scene where we meet Brandon for the first time, Paragon, and he's drinking coffee, and he runs down the alley and is Superman in it into his costume. When the Utopian steps in to save him, and he looks at him and he's like, you're supposed to call for backup, and then he says, you're paying for this, for all the damage that he caused. It's like, see, this is different. This is not this isn't even something like that the Justice League do. They cause all this damage and carnage, and then they leave. The Avengers, the Avengers don't step in to fix anything. So so they do that. They are conscious of casualties. They are conscious of collateral damage, and so in that way, it's completely different. Like there's no equation of like, well, if we lose 20% of the people on this mission, it's a success. No, if they lose one person, they consider it a failure.
Yeah,
and that's
and
important.
again, yes, absolutely, because The Boys was more about a nihilistic view of people
With powers,
that are heroes. Yeah, and that's one of the things. I love The Boys, but that's one of the things I don't like about it is that it has such a pessimistic view of, well, if people get powers, they're going to be assholes.
Well, it's
And again,
Garthiness. I mean,
yeah. Oh, I know that. Yeah, it's just,
so.
and again, yes, that's true. A lot of people would, but there would also be people like the Utopian, like Steve Rogers out there that truly do want to do the best and help those around you. And
well,
yes,
if you look at Mark Millar just in general, right? Like, Dave, Kick-Ass, like he's very positive about being a hero and helping people. Eggsy is very positive about being Kingsman and helping people. The Utopian is very positive. Huck is all positivity all the time. Even oh shoot, I don't remember the character, the guy that James McAvoy ended up playing in the movie. He's positive.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't start out as positive, but then when he realizes he has power and agency, like he's like, no, I need to use this for something good. I'm not just an assassin who is at the whim of some random, higher power picking who I kill.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All in all, I liked it. The only 2 episodes I watched back to back were the last 2. Like, I watched the first episode. I went and did some other stuff. I came back and watched the second episode. You know, I was watching more than one episode in the day, but I did not ever sit down and just binge any of it until the end. And it's because I liked, like, when you said it dragged, I was surprised because, like I said, those were the only 2 episodes I actually kind of, you know, quote unquote binged.
Yeah, there were a couple times where I watched back-to-back episodes, and I actually watched episodes 6 and 7 together, and it was late, and I was like, you know what, I probably shouldn't watch episode 8.
Yeah.
Even though it was like 35 minutes, I believe. But yeah, all in all, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it has its faults, but I really do want to revisit this world again, see some of these characters, and see how they not necessarily step it up, but transition from where, you know, some of these, like where Brandon is now to where he becomes, what he becomes in the comic, and how much of that they will follow.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and again, with shows like this, that's what I'm always curious about, because again, there were definite changes in here. What are they going to change as far as going forward? Because like you said, I almost think that they would wait until a season 2 finale to have what happened to the Utopian and Lady Liberty, for the sake of that surprise moment.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't give you what comes after until season 3, so for example.
Here's what I would like to see in volume 2 is it happens just out of the blue in the middle of the season, and then there's a time jump for the rest of the season.
That would be ideal for
That's
me.
Ideal. Like that's the near pinfall where you think, oh my God, he's gonna win even though he didn't hit his finisher. You know, this is like, oh my God, the series is over. Oh wait, there's a 3rd generation of heroes now, and Jason is amazing. So, yeah. I'm just gonna say this: Netflix, when you have Jason reveal who he is, age that character up so you can cast an 18-year-old to play a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Do not do an 8-year-old. Please.
No, please no.
Please no. Do not do a little the precocious little kid. Like, that is not, Jason is capable, and he's a genius. He's powerful and confident, and, you know, let's not give him the Amazon Prime quote unquote invincible Mark Grayson treatment. Let's give him the, like, this is like no other kid hero you've ever seen before treatment.
Yeah. I like that idea of aging him up.
But they're probably going to make him a girl, so.
Thanks for that.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So out of 10 Black Star smashed in faces. Oh, sorry. Out of 10 Black Star clone smashed in faces. What do you give the season as a whole?
I give it a 6. I was kind of teetering between a 6 and a 6.5. It's still, you know, either way, it's enjoyable for me. I really liked it. There were some very, you know, I really like, you know, Josh Duhamel. I like Chloe's character, Ian Quinlan as Hutch. Those are like kind of my three all-stars. You know, Ben Daniels was pretty good as well. It didn't get to that 6.5 or 7 for me just because of some of the narrative choices. Not that the narrative was convoluted, but the whole past, 1929 past, was just too much for me.
Yep.
You know, some of the acting wasn't as good as it could have been. Some of the actors chosen just didn't fit the roles as well as they should have been. There was some iffiness with some of the special effects and some of the fight scenes.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it, and I liked the world it created and some of the questions it brought up.
Sure.
And I am looking forward to seeing what they do down the road.
Yeah. All right. All right. So I treated this kind of like a gymnastics routine, right? The ceiling for this was an 8. Like, I don't think it was like super difficult. Like, so like a 10 was never on the table, right? This was kind of
right.
This was kind of it's an easy pitch as far as a show goes, And the source material is simple enough that like they don't have to do anything crazy to make it good. So an 8 was the highest I was ever going to give it. I take away points for like bad acting. I took away points for all the like the stuff in the past. And then I took away points because there were some narrative things in the middle that just kind of they overcomplicated, and they didn't go with the keep it simple stupid method to just tell the best story they possibly could. They overcomplicated it for some odd reason. So I'm with you. I landed at a 6. So but like it's a high 6. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's not like Lock and Key where I know we're gonna watch it and talk about it, but I'm dreading it. It's more like it's more like the Boys, where like, you know, like I like the Boys. Like if you put this and the Boys in front of me, I would actually probably watch this first. Because like I have to be in the right, like the Boys comes out at the exact right time of year to be nihilist because it's kind of cold outside, and you know we're not there's not a whole lot to do, but with this one, like it was nice out. I cut the grass in between. I went for a bike ride. I did stuff. I could do stuff. Went to, Mother's Day was happening. But it was still like, it was easy to come back to. It was like, but the biggest problem for me was the overcomplication of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said that early on too.
Yeah.
When you were,
in the first episode, they overcomplicated it immediately off the bat. And so yeah. Anyway, cool. Anything else?
Yeah. No, just again, I'll probably, and again, I agree with what you said about the Boys too. I love the Boys, but I cannot watch the Boys the same way I could watch something like this. Even though I think it's narratively it's done better, it's just the tone is. I have to be in the right frame of mind, like you said.
Yep.
And this is one of those I can come back to. Just say, hey, let me just throw this on and let it run while I'm doing stuff. Let it run in the background when I'm doing stuff. I'll sit here, watch this. Oh, I like this scene right here for about 5 minutes. Then do something. Then continue to do stuff in the background.
Yep. So yeah, this is a great like working and watching show. Mm-hmm. So all right, cool. I don't have anything else to add. So I think on that note, we will thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the episode on Sunday. We review Invincible and the Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage, Electric Boogaloo, and A Quiet Place 2, The Kids Are Now Bait trailers. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, on that note, we'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
The Infamous Podcast is recorded in Kings Mills, Ohio, just north of Cincinnati. You can find new episodes every Sunday on Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast, our website, or anywhere podcasts are downloaded. This show is hosted by Darryl Jasper and me, Brian Tudor. To find more information about the show, visit us at infamouspodcast.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Infamous Podcast to keep up with the show. We also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/infamouspodcast. We have some great rewards for our patrons and are looking for help to grow the show to bring you more of the content you want to hear. Music for this podcast is provided by Michael Henry from meetmichaelhenry.com. So, whenever you're listening to us, have a great day, night, evening, weekend, whenever it is, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.